Starting in 2013, new Ram trucks came with an optional projector headlight. Here we have a customized housing from headlightworkshop.com and an original projector headlight. These new headlights used halogen bulbs in a low beam projector and a high beam reflector, and then halogen reflector fog lights. A lot of people think that they should have been made a little bit different to be brighter, maybe stock HIDs right off the line. But if you want to add an HID conversion kit to your low beam, your high beam, or your fog lights, it's kind of difficult on the new Ram trucks because of the CAN bus monitoring and control system that they use. It's much more complex than any other vehicle out there, and in this video we're going to go over step by step what comes in our Type B CAN bus integration kit for your fog lights, high beams, and low beams. Make sure to watch all 3 of our videos in our channel where we do step-by-step installs on a Ram truck so you can see how to do the install from the battery to the bulb. You essentially get 2 components in the Type B CAN bus HID conversion kit. You get a 35 watt or 55 watt HID conversion kit using Gen 4 Hilux ballasts from GTR Lighting, and you get the Morimoto Mopar spec CAN bus integration relay harness. First, we're going to open up the HID kit and show you what's included. There's a generic install guide that you're not really going to use. There's a couple HID bulbs and a couple HID ballasts. Now the ballast you can do either 35 watt or 55 watt. The 55 watt Hilux ballast looks like this. It's a big brick with mounting tabs, and the mounting tabs are actually a part of the design for the electrical system. You want to try and ground that to a piece of metal. Use a screw or a nut and bolt and mount that to some metal on your chassis. And there's 2 of them, you only need 1. If you do the 35 watt HID kit, it's a much smaller ballast. It's a slim ballast, and it has the CAN bus integration module on the outside and the igniter on the outside. So there's a little bit more wiring, but it installs the same way. The only difference is you have a ground wire coming off the ballast. That has to be connected to your chassis somewhere also. For the HID bulbs, there are several options. For the early year low beam, it was a 9012 bulb. For the later year low beam, it was a 9005 bulb. All of the high beams from 2013 and up were all 9005, and the fog lights could either be 9005 or 9006. Luckily, we've got it all figured out, mapped out for you on our website. When you find the product that you're looking for, low beam, fog lights, or high beam, just make sure you select the correct options that fit your truck. The bulbs come in a box like this. There is alcohol wipes that you're supposed to clean the glass of the bulbs before you plug them in. There's an instruction sheet that says to clean your bulbs. And then the bulbs come packaged together like this. You take all this out. And here you're going to use everything. The way this connects is inside the headlight, you take out your halogen bulb and you plug in the HID. You plug in this connector where the original halogen bulb connected inside the headlight. It passes through the dust cover, creating a waterproof seal with this grommet. And then on the outside, these 2 connect to the ballast. The Morimoto Mopar spec CAN bus relay harness is pretty overwhelming. Let me explain. Inside the bag, you have a lot going on. The blue metal boxes are load equalizing resistors. This is what tricks the computer into thinking you still have the original halogen bulbs in place. Without these resistors, it thinks there's a problem and it'll shut down the headlight circuit, it'll flash, or give you a bulb out warning. We want to avoid all those things, which is why we need this big relay harness. I'm going to start from the top and work my way down and explain what everything is in this kit. First, we have a pair of relays that are connected to a bracket. You want to mount them with the bracket either screwed into some metal or zip tied to something strong. And you want them up like this. You want the wires coming out the bottom so that if any moisture hits it, it drains down and past the seal and doesn't get into the wiring. If you mount it upside down or sideways, there's a greater chance that moisture can get into the relays and cause corrosion. Coming off the relay, you've got all these different cables. There is a battery negative cable. There is a battery positive cable with a fuse holder. So the negative one goes to the negative terminal and positive goes to the positive terminal on your battery. You have a long and a short output that go to your ballast. This is what actually powers up the HID conversion kit instead of your stock wiring. So this one goes all the way to one side of the truck and this one stays on the short side. The last thing is the input. Now the way this works is you can see we actually have two of the same connectors. This one you're going to plug into one side and it's a dummy plug. The only thing it does is gives load with these resistors to that one side of the headlight. The other input harness that looks like this one is the main input that controls the whole relay harness. Voltage from your original headlight or fog light wiring comes in here. It goes to the two resistors that trick the computer into thinking that the original light bulb is still in place. And then it passes down to this little box, which is actually a capacitor. See, the new Rams use something called PWM, or pulse width modulation, to control the brightness and longevity of your halogen light bulbs. If you let the PWM run without a capacitor, it'll make your headlights flicker. So we add the capacitor to make sure that the HIDs run solid and strong. Passes through the capacitor into this harness that goes to the relay to turn everything on. So you take the original halogen bulb out and this connects there. And then your new HID bulb goes into the socket. The HID wiring passes through the dust cover and the grommet, and two of them connect to the ballast and the other two connect to the input of the relay harness. The relay harness comes pre-assembled, has one connection that goes to the capacitor and one connection that goes to the two resistors. Mount the two resistors to metal. The capacitor can just get tied up anywhere. Another connection that then goes to the relay harness. The relay harness also has an output that goes to the ballast to power on the ballast. It has two cables that go to the battery, one for positive and one for negative. And it has a much longer output cable that we tied up here to go to the other side of the truck to power this ballast. From this ballast, the output goes to the HID bulb and it installs the same as the other side. Plug this in to the wiring inside the headlight, replace the halogen bulb with the new HID, and then connect the resistors to the HID bulb like this. So on the inside of the headlight, this connects here, the bulb goes in here, and the pass-through for this harness connects to the resistors. Mount the resistors to metal, plug these two into the ballast. Now keep in mind, if anything's plugged in backwards, it might not work. So if you turn it on and the system doesn't fire up right away, flip the connection around and see if that's your problem.
So the first step in disassembling the front of your 2015 and up Ram with projector style headlights is you open the hood and you'll see that you've got this cover up front here and there's these little push clips on it. And you can get one of these little push clip tools at any hardware store. They're like $7. They were great for this particular application. You can use just about anything. You know, if you're in a pinch, you could probably use a screwdriver, a flat screwdriver. I get under the cover itself to pry up on it. If you try prying up on just the clip, a lot of the times the sides will deform and you won't get it. You'll just make a mess of things and it ends up frustrating, but as you can see, it comes up pretty easy like this. So. We're going to set that off to the side. The next step is to remove these 4 10mm fasteners from the top of the grill. Now you just have to grab the grill down here. There's just these little push pins that hold it in on each side. Go ahead and give it a tug backwards. Some of them are pretty strong. Some of them fall right out. As you can see, here's the pin. And that's all you're trying to defeat when you're doing this, is just those little plastic retainers. Now we're onto the headlights. So they're pretty simple, especially if you're looking at them. Once again, we're dealing with 10mm fasteners. You can get at these with a ratchet. If you have an impact or a drill, you can get at it with that. There's one down here, there's one up here. So now, on the back side of the headlight in the fender, there's a little trap door. And it's held down with a little push pin that's plastic as well. Now, this is hard to show on camera, but on the back of the headlight, there's a plastic tab, and if you look in there with a flashlight, you can see it. And it's a little lever, and if you pull it down, the headlight will come out. A lot of the times it's going to fight you to get it out, and that's because of this. This is where that tab that I was talking about in the fender well connects. And so what you're doing is fighting this, and it's tricky. Sometimes you have to pull it left to right, up and down. It will come out. You have to fight with it a little bit. If it's your first time taking it apart, honestly, I'd recommend putting a little tape down here, just in case. Last thing you want to do is scratch your nice truck. So we've got one connector here that we have to deal with, and the easiest way to get it off is to take a flat screwdriver, put it down here, lift up on it, out it goes. Now we can take our headlight and set it on the bench. Okay, so we're going to install the high beam relay harness now. We've already got a low beam relay harness in the vehicle. We're going to put this relay pack right alongside the low beam harness. So all we've got to do, the nice part is, if you've already done the low beam harness, all you got to do is follow what you've already done. These wires are pretty much going to the same place, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel here at all. So there's that. I try to keep the relays all in a similar spot, you know, as close as I can. It makes troubleshooting easier in the future, and it keeps the install as similar as possible. At this time, I usually take a look at my wires coming out of the relay harness just to see what's going where. I get things a little bit organized. These resistors and everything are heading over to the driver's side. I'm going to unplug that from here and pass the OEM input and this ballast connector through this little gap here. And then I'm going to plug it back in. Make sure if you unplug this, that red goes to red again. Otherwise you're going to have a funny problem that you're going to have to figure out. Once again, mounting resistors, just bend this tab down, and we're going to secure that to the front support of the vehicle. So right in here. You can just move these harnesses out of the way as you see fit. To do that, we're just going to use some self-drilling screws. Nothing too crazy. There's one. There's two. So now that we've got that part done, we're going to connect the battery connections. You've got positive and negative, power and ground, and they're labeled as such. So this one's our battery negative, and this one with the fuse holder is our battery positive. bring those over here for now. This one's heading over to the passenger side for the passenger side HID ballast. So I'm just going to lay that there for now. Let's make these battery connections. Those are just 10mm bolts. The ground is right here on the fender. As you can see, this is where we've grounded our low beam harness to. It's just very efficient. It works well. Won't have any problems going there. You know, there's no sense in having 2 or 3 grounds running all over the engine bay to different spots. If you can keep everything in the same area, it makes troubleshooting that much easier in the future, should you ever need to. And then the positive terminal on the battery, you just lift this cover up, pull this little cap off. Attach that there. Now you're going to want to make sure that you don't leave these wires just hanging out. You're going to want to zip tie those and make sure that they're secure so they don't get caught in a fan or anything. That'd be terrible. There's plenty of harnesses running down here. All I'm going to do is coil up the slack and zip tie it to those harnesses. You can't go wrong doing that. So now, let's modify our headlight. So on the back of the headlight, you're going to find this dust cover. As you can see, this is where our low beam wiring is exiting the headlight. We're going to basically copy that. These are just 8mm screws, either 8mm or 5/16. Either one will work. So as you can see here, I'm just going to pull this so I have a little slack. I'm going to disconnect the low beam just so I can move this thing out of the way. And if you just twist it counterclockwise and pull it out, you can work with the bulb on the outside. It just makes it a little bit easier. Go ahead and unplug that. Now, in order for me to take this off, I would have to de-pin it, and I don't want to do that. So, or I'd have the bulb dangling, and I don't want to do that either. So, to be safe, I'm just going to drill it like so, and work with it on the bench. Using a step bit, you want to drill that hole out to 7/8 in diameter. You could probably get by with 1 inch if that's all you've got. It's going to be a little bit bigger though, and it won't seal as well. So if you can do 7/8, I highly recommend that. And the reason we're drilling it out is just like on the low beam here, we need to put that grommet in there. Before we get to the grommet, we need to de-pin this connector.
The reason you have to de-pin this connector is that these little connectors fit through the hole in the dust cover just fine. It's this guy. It has these shoulders on the sides that don't allow it to pass through. And even when you take that off, you still have the clips that hold this thing in place that don't let it go through. So just pop off this retainer collar and then use a pry tool. You can either use a de-pinning tool like this, or a really sharp small pick, or a jeweler's flat screwdriver. And on the top of the connector, on the inside of each pin, there's little recesses where the pick tool will fit down in. And you want to push it in there and then twist the tool outward to release the retaining clip that holds the metal pin in place. You see right on the back side there's a flexible bar of metal, and that's what we're trying to bend from the top of the connector like this. Push it in, twist the tip to the outside of the connector, and then use your other fingers to pull the wire out. Now if you don't put the wires back in the connector exactly how they came out, nothing's going to work. So take pictures, label them, and make sure that the black and red wires go back into the connector exactly how they came out.
The reason we go through all this effort is we want this headlight to be sealed against the elements as best as possible, just like it was from the factory. Last thing you want to do is do an install like this, go through all the work and not put the dust cover back on and have water and moisture getting in there. So as you can see, that fits pretty good. Like I said, that's drilled out to 7/8 of an inch. I really recommend doing that to that size. It just seems to fit the best. It's what the grommet's designed for. any bigger and it's not going to seal very well. So next we're going to connect our low beam plug to this harness. We'll connect our, or high beam, sorry, high beam connector to this harness, low beam over here. Take our cap off. So now we're going to just insert this bulb. Now these HID bulbs in particular have blue wiring. If they come red and black, don't worry about it, it does the same thing. There's just a few different styles out there. Alright, so reassembly wise, now that that bulb's all plugged in, just put this cap back on. You can start your screws by hand just to get things rolling. Okay, so now all we've got to do is repin this connector.
So after you push all your wiring through the hole in the dust cover, reinsert the wires into the connector. Now if they don't snap in place and grab, you might have to use your pick tool and bend that retaining clip a little bit. When you push it back in, you want to tug on them and feel positive engagement. You might have to do this for both of them, and once everything's clipped in place, put your plastic retainer back on the bottom of the bulb. It hugs the two wires and then pushes up and over the two shoulders on the connector and clips in place. Do this last part after you've already run this dissected connector through your dust cover. When it's all done, you should be able to look at the top and see that your two metal pins are flat and flush with the top of the plastic connector.
Now the next step is to install the ballast on this side. And what we have to do is just find a suitable place to either zip tie it or screw it to the frame of the vehicle in here. The mounting tabs on each side of the ballast are designed to be grounded to prevent radio noise. So if you do this install this way and get radio noise when you turn on your headlights, switch it up and mount the ballast with screws through the mounting tabs to the frame of the truck instead of using zip ties like I did. And there we have that. Now we can bring the headlight over and plug everything in. So, keeping in mind which ballast goes to which, we've got our high beam here. So we'll make these ballast connections. This needs to go to this resistor connector here. There we go. Got our low beam connections here. Alright, and we've got our low beam connector here, which just goes to this harness coming out of the headlight itself. Alright, so make sure that you plug in the last OEM connector at the very bottom here, the main connector that controls your turn signal and everything. As you can see, it's pretty messy back here. We're not going to leave it like that, but the last thing you want to do is tidy everything up, turn it on, and have something not work or something plugged in backwards. So for now, what we're going to do is just stage this up in there, make sure that it turns on and functions. Make sure to test the headlights with the engine running so the CAN bus system is engaged. So we've got our low beam, we've got our high beam. So what you're going to want to do now is run your passenger side ballast power from the relay harness to the passenger side. The easiest way to do that is to pass it under this radiator arm here and follow this factory wiring harness that already runs across the front of the vehicle. You can secure it with zip ties. There we go. Now we need to pull this headlight out. Do the same thing that we just did on the driver's side to it. Drilling the hole, repinning the harness, all of that. And we'll get this ballast mounted over here and some resistors and we'll be good to go. Same story as the other side essentially. We have resistors to mount down on that frame, which I've bent the tabs for. You can bend them as you see fit. Depending on where you're going on this thing, there's a few different contours, and so you might have to just play with it a little bit. So the first thing we're going to do is mount these resistors. Alright, resistors are mounted. They're secure, make sure they're not touching any plastic. They do get awfully hot. And we're in good shape. Now we just have to mount the ballast in there somewhere and install our headlight. The mounting tabs on each side of the ballast are designed to be grounded to prevent radio noise. So if you do this install this way and get radio noise when you turn on your headlights, switch it up and mount the ballast with screws through the mounting tabs to the frame of the truck instead of using zip ties like I did. So the ballast is mounted down there. It's zip tied to this harness here. It's nice and secure. It's protected by the wheel liner and the bumper up front. It won't get wet, won't get damaged, should be in a pretty fine spot. So next all we have to do is install the headlight itself. And in this case we have our low beam over here. So we're going to connect that. The output right here and this one right here just go down to those resistor packs up front here. And that's all there is to it. So we're going to take our ballast outputs here, connect those. I usually do these first just so I have more room with them. And then we'll plug these in. Okay. We have our factory plug. It goes down at the bottom of the headlight. Plug that in, make sure you hear it click. And install the assembly. Once again, we're going to just make sure that this thing works before we go any further. So all the wiring back there will get zip tied up and tidied up and cleaned. But for now, we just need to make sure that this thing powers on. Make sure both our low beam and our high beam work. So now that we know that the headlights work on both low beam and high beam, very important you figure that out before you get this thing put back together. It's not the most fun vehicle in the world to take apart, especially twice. Now that we know everything works, you can go back in and zip tie things, tidy it up, clean it up, make sure that the resistors aren't going to touch anything, your wiring's ran in such a way that it's not going to hit any moving parts. There's not a whole lot of moving parts up front, so you're pretty safe there. And just overall check things out. Make sure that everything's good. Like I said, if you just take your time, do it once, do it right, you won't have to come back in here and check it out again.
Well, there you have it. Nothing to it, right? No, I'm just kidding. It's a big involved install, but we're here to help. We're here Monday through Friday for phone calls and emails, or if you have a question, you can drop it in the comments section below the video. You can also talk with us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Google+. And please subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our other lighting videos. Remember, we've got a full install video for low beam, fog lights, and high beam for the projector headlights on your Ram, so check out our other videos. Thanks for watching.